Them 62 the Rebbe's own words. Oh God brought the people round about, and Israelites came up, chamushim, armed or fifth, from the land of Egypt. One know the eating of a Jewish person brings about a face-to-face union between the transcendent one and his imminent presence, as in Boaz said to Ruth during the meal, come here, specifically during the meal, meaning that by virtue of the eating, come here, which refers to the union of the transcendent one and his imminent presence, as and Judah came towards him, which refers to the meeting of one king with another. But for the years to happen, the eating must be from spiritually refined food that contains no contaminants, for food that contains contaminants can cause a person to sin. Number 2, now food is refined by way of faith. The truth is, it is a major obligation to sharpen the intellect in order to understand things clearly to the limits God has set to what the human mind can comprehend. Regarding this, it is said, know what to answer the heretic. For there is a difference between questions. There is a question to which a human being can understand the answer, regarding which it is said, no, what to answer. And there is a question to which it is impossible for the human intellect to understand the answer, and only in the future will the answer become revealed. A person should not delve into these latter questions, and anyone who relies on his intellect and delves into them regarding this, it is said, all those who enter her will not return. One should not rely on one's own intellect regarding such a question, but one should rather stand upon faith. And even regarding the questions that do have an answer, the pathways of the intellect are sometimes blocked, rendering one unable to answer heretical thoughts that have entered the mind, with one not knowing how to respond to them. And here you see is relative for each individual according to his state of mind, depending upon the extent of one's ability to comprehend. For we must serve God with both inclinations, both inclination for evil subservient to the inclination for good, omaaiiinnn, the inclination for evil subservient to the inclination for good. Yeah, but as our sages said, love with all your heart, with both of your inclinations. One's heart must be completely with one's God, so that there is no conflict between the two inclinations. That is, one's heart should not be split as in their hearts were split. And the truth is, if a person would know with a complete heart that the earth is filled with His glory, and that God is standing there during prayer and hearing it, one would certainly pray with great enthusiasm and be very meticulous to focus on the words one is saying. But because a person does not know this with a complete heart, for this reason one is not too enthused and is not meticulous. Each person according to the limits of his intellect and knowledge, so are his enthusiasm and meticulousness. Oh, now, wow. This knowledge comes from the inclination to good, that is in the heart. While the concealment of this knowledge comes from the inclination to evil, that is in the heart. The concealment, this concealment of knowledge being itself, the heretical thoughts and questions. For the inclination to evil confounds one's heart, so that one falls into evil. And the rectification of this conflict within the heart must ever make place. At its source, says become what was the very coming into existence of the conflict of the inclination. This is because the very coming into existence of the conflict of the inclination to evil is rooted in the conflict of holiness. Only that when it evolves from level to level until it reaches down here, it is transformed into the conflict of the inclination to evil. As in their hearts were split, and poisons a person with heresy, concealing from him the passive intellect, so that one is unable to answer. The conflict of holiness is the conflict between the sages of the Mishnah and the Talmud, where one forbids and the other permits. But as this devolves downward, it is transformed into the conflict of the inclination to evil. But when one rectifies the conflict of holiness, then the conflict of the inclination to evil is automatically neutralized, since that is its only source of existence, and the rectification of the conflict of holiness is through halachic rulings. The yes, because halachic rulings bring peace and resolution to the conflict between the sages of the Mishnah and the Talmud. Thus, by studying the codes of halvai, one binds oneself to the peace of holiness and rectifies the conflict of holiness, and the conflict of the inclination to evil in one's heart is neutralized. Then one can serve God with all of one's heart, with both inclinations, and the gates of the intellect are open. Opened, and one knows what's the answer to the heretic. All this takes place by way of the above resolution and peace. For this reason, the letters of Shalom are the acronym of Oy V'dam Ashetushiv La'apikoides. Know what to answer to the heretic. For by way of peace, one knows what to answer the heretic in one's own heart. This is alluded to, and I will praise you with an uprightness of hearts. When I study the laws of your righteousness, the Hebrew word here for heart is written with an extra letter to allude to the two inclinations. When I study the laws of your righteousness, that is, by way of studying the codes of halacha. On the other hand, one should not delve into the questions that have no answer, but rather strengthen one's faith. Then when one has complete faith, a union between the transcendent one and his immanent presence can come about through one's eating, as a nourished faith, meaning the nourishment that one attains. Through faith. Number 3, now the main perfection and adornment of faith is by bringing those distant closer, as in, so that they all call out in God's name. That even Gentiles will approach Jewish faith and serve Him together. Number 4, and to perfect faith. That is to bring the distant closer. One must first elevate the sparks of the letters of speech. When the letters of speech are refined, then speech transforms itself and gathers the sparks of holiness from among the klippas, and the klippas are left without any life force. Then when the Gentiles who derive nourishment from the klippas see that there is no life force, they cast away their faiths. As on that day, each person will cast away his idols of silver and idols of gold, and bind themselves to the faith of Israel. As then I will turn clarified speech to the nations. Clarified speech refers to the speech that was extracted from among them. It turns itself back to the nations in order to gather from among them the remnants of the sparks of holiness, then so that they all all call out in God's name, that they bind themselves to Jewish faith is fulfilled. Number 5, and elevating the sparks of speech requires fasting. This is alluded to in on account of their transgression and their sins they will fast. As a result of which he will send his word to heal them, because speech is rectified mainly through fasting. This is because the klippas are mainly nourished only from the rear side of holiness, since from the face of holiness they are unable to derive nourishment due to the brightness of light. Due to the brightness of light, sometimes though they are intentionally allowed from above to derive light from the face of holiness, but this is only to their detriment, as in a time when a person rules over another to his detriment. Now all lusts are in the category of klippas, for lusts are redundant, since the body can survive without fulfilling them. Hence they are redundant to the body's survival. Just as the klipa voice shells/rinds are redundant, since the main thing is the fruit, and the shells/rinds are redundant. So when lusts overpower a person, the klipas are overpowering. Holiest, and the main lusts are represented by the 3 ministers of Paroi, the butler, the baker, and the butcher, the water pourer. The butler, the drink pourer, the baker, and the butcher, which represents the windpipe, the esophagus, and the veins, which represent the windpipe, the esophagus, and the veins. These embody the lust for eating and drinking, which are primary, since all other lusts are drawn from them. They are nourished from paroi, the acronym of oirev, the nev, the vape of the neck, which is the rear side. Furthermore, their main nourishment comes from speech that is in the category of after these words, for they are near to them, since the windpipe, the esophagus, and the veins are close to the 5 articulators of speech. Specifically, their main nourishment comes from speech that is not refined enough. So when these lusts, which are the klippas, overpowered, one must bind and conceal the rear side of holiness, so that they are unable to derive nourishments. And the binding of the rear side of holiness is by way of fasting. This can be compared to the writing of the divine name Yikevavke in the backwards form. One first writes with Yud, writes the Yud. One first writes the Yod. One first writes the Yod, and when one wants to write the Hey, one first goes back and writes Yud K, and so on. Similarly with the fast, which is the main way of subduing the above ministers. This must be done by way of binding the rear side of holiness. This is because the main merit of a fast is reckoned from the time at which one began to fast. For instance, when one fasts for 2 days, the reason why the second day is reckoned as more spiritually potent is not on its own merit, but because we look back to the first day. Only in their context does the second day take on a greater merit. Only in their context does the second day take on a greater merit. Also, the most important part of anything is its beginning, for all beginnings are difficult, since one is then making a complete turnabout. After the beginning, though, one enters a bit into a routine, and it is no longer that difficult for him. Similarly, with each successive day that one goes beyond the beginning, it becomes easier, for one gets more into the routine. Meuman. Hence the main potency of the service of all subsequent days is clearly the beginning. So one must return backwards to the first day, when one began to understand and to fast, which is the beginning of repentance. At that point it is difficult for a person For one is making a complete turnabout, so each day one returns in order to receive the power of the beginning. Now, since these above ministers are close to speech, when they overpower, they draw speech into exile in Mitzrayim, Egypt, representing the mates or straits of the throat. My throat is dry, and one is unable to utter a single word before God. Through a fast, though famishing oneself, one draws the waters of kindness to wet one's throat, and one is able to talk. This is alluded to when there was a famine in the land. A famine corresponds to a fast, in that one famishes oneself, and this is binding the rear side of holiness. For Yid Kei Vav Kei Elokim, in the backwards form is numerically Rav. In the name Yid Kei Vav Kei written backwards, that is Yid Kei Vav Kei comes to 72, and the name of the Kim written backwards as Aleph Lamed. Aleph Lamed Kei Aleph Lamed Kei Yid. Aleph Lamed Kei Yid Mem comes to 200, together coming to Rav 272. And Abraham descended to Egypt, that is the bringing down of the waters of kindness to wet the straits of the throat, in order to extract the throat from the category of my throat is dry, as in going and traveling Hanegbu southward, in order to wet the nekivo aridness, in fulfillment of call out with your throat, don't hold back. Then when one has bound oneself to the rear side of holiness, yes, so that it is impossible for the klippas to enter and draw nourishment from there, the face of holiness is revealed. Then Paro's servants saw her, that is, those ministers saw the splendid beauty of the speech, and they praised her before Paroi. All this is intentional from God, in order to extract from their mouths what they have swallowed, as in a time when one person rules over another to his detriment. This is alluded to in God-afflicted Paroi, and in a God-fearing woman. A woman is to be praised, as in they praise her before Paroi. This is only for the purpose of give her the fruit of her hands, that is, to extract the sparks of holiness from among them, when she extracts all her life force from among the klipos. Like them, when all the Gentiles will cast away their idols, and all turn to the faith of Israel, so that they all call in God's name. This is the essence of adorning faith, so that others come close to the faith. This is alluded to in a beautiful maiden who has no eyes. A beautiful maiden represents faith, as in you are beautiful, Re'asi, my beloved, corresponding to Re'ebebebe. Corresponding to Re'ei, nourish faith. Who has no eyes refers to the above questions, regarding which one should not delve into, but rather strengthen one's faith. Her body is concealed and revealed. She is concealed, since if you would ask the believer what is the rationale for faith, he would certainly not be able to give you a rationale. For faith is only relevance regarding something about which one knows no rationale. Nevertheless revealed, since for the believer the matter is obvious, as if he was seeing with his eyes that in which he believes, on account of his full faith. She comes out in the morning, and is concealed during the day, since faith is renewed for a person each morning, as in renewed each morning, but concealed during the day. Faith becomes concealed on account of the mundane concerns of life. Faith becomes concealed on account of the mundane concerns of life. She adorns herself with jewelry. That word navavat, meaning that faith is adorned mainly by bringing close to it those people who had not been close to it. Nanach nachman meuman. Nachman meuman. Number 6, when faith is so perfect, then one's eating is very precious. For it has brought about a union between the transcendent one and his imminent presence. As in Boyas Seterus, And faith advocates for the distant ones before God, that He bring them near under His wings, and this is what it advocates. Those who are distant from God have erred, mainly because God can only be known by inferring the hidden from the revealed. So since they see from the revealed that the operation of the world follows the arrangement of the constellations, they fall into errors, each one into his own mistake. Some think that everything runs according to natural law, that the world operates according to its own rules, while others think that one must serve the intermediary, as was the error regarding the golden calf. They wanted the calf to be an intermediary between themselves and God, as they said, which will go before us as an intermediary. Many fall into such mistakes, making the immediate cause into an intermediary between themselves and God. That is, they believe in God, but also believe in intermediary means and claim that these are necessary. In other words, they believe, for instance, that the means of sustenance is an occupation. But say that the means of occupation. They believe, for instance, that the means of sustenance is an occupation, but say that the means of occupation is the main thing, as if without this means of occupation, God is unable to provide them with sustenance. Or regarding the means of healing, which is medicine, they make that the main thing, as if without those medicines that God cannot heal. But this is not so, for God is the cause of all causes, and the means of all means. For God is the cause of all causes, and the means of all means. For God is the cause of all causes, and the means of all means. And He does not need any means, so our involvement in these means must be only with faith in God, and we must not make the means the main thing. And when a tzaddik overrides with his power what the constellational arrangement dictates, then from the revealed to the hidden, it becomes known that there is a God who hears the prayer of the tzaddik, overturning the constellations and changing nature. All this will take place in the future, as our sages said, in the future tzaddikim will resurrect the dead. And other wonders, this is alluded to when Judah approached him. This is the meaning of one king with another. He said, "Please, my master, the immanent presence begs mercy from the transcendent one on behalf of the distant ones. Let your servant say something in my master's ear, so that it not be heard by any intermediary. May your wrath not be roused against your servant regarding the past, for you are like paroi from the root word meaning revelation. For you are known to man only from the revealed. And since you are known only from the revealed, therefore, each person erred in his mistake. But when you override your will for the will of the tzaddik, as our sages said, God decrees and a tzaddik overrides it, then people will know the hidden from the revealed when they see that the constellational arrangement dictates some decree, but the tzaddik overrides it. They will know that there is a God who carries out the will of the tzaddik. This is alluded to in, they will know that there is a God who carries out the will of the tzaddik. This is alluded to in just as Paro decrees, and does not carry out Paro, representing the constellations whose decrees are known to all. So do you decree and not carry out, for the tzaddik overrides it. This is also alluded to in God Yahababa says.
This is also alluded.
Brought the people round about, upon which the Medrash states the Yasef reclining refers to a meal. It was customary to recline during meals, which is a seibo, the means, which is hasibo, the means, which is hasihibo, the means. Chamushi means one out of Chamesh, 5, a reference to the 5 articulators of speech, by way of which all the Gentiles were turned to the faith of Israel and serve God together, as written, "Then I will turn clarified speech to the nations." The Israelites came up from the land of Mitzrayim, from the Meitzar straits of the throat, that is, by the Israelites rising above the major lusts. From the straits of the throat, by way of speech, the Gentiles are brought to Jewish faith. This is the main adornment of faith, as in she adorns herself with jewelry that is not. Thus, by way of perfect faith, eating becomes permissible, as in Vayaseh. Until here are the Rebbe's own words. Nach, nachman, meuman. Regarding section 2, Shalom is the acronym of Know that's the answer to the heretics. For by way, no, what's the answer to the heretics? No, what's the answer to the heretic? For by way of peace, one knows what's the answer to the heretic. In one's own halvai, it's also peace among the Jewish people between each one and the other. Also neutralizes heresy as said elsewhere. This is what our sages said. Ephraim is bound to idolatry. Leave him alone when there is peace among Israel. Even when they worship idols, they are forgiven. However, when their hearts are split, then they are held responsible for heresies are caused by dispute, since each individual holds fast to his own opinion, since the people do not come together to discuss with one another, to exchange ideas. And even if they would come together and discuss with each other, no one would change his mind as a result, on account of the will to win the dispute. When there is peace, even if they worship idols, they are forgiven. For through peace, each one's idolatry and heresy will certainly be eradicated by their talking to each other and correcting each other from erroneous and heretical ideas. They will thus certainly reach perfect and upright faith by way of peace. Also regarding section 2, halachic rulings come about through dispute. Halacha is the rectification for dispute, as explained in lekutei 12, number 4. For the letter combinations of dispute are transmuted into halachic rulings. For the letter combinations of dispute are transmuted into halachic rulings. Also explained there. For the letter combinations of dispute are transmuted into halachic rulings. Also explained there is that the tzaddik studies these letter combinations and transmutes them into halachic rulings. This is the concept of what is stated here, that one must study halachic rulings in order to rectify dispute. To understand this, regarding section 5, the most important part of anything is the beginning. For the beginning, for the beginning is the most difficult part when one is making a complete turnabout. Therefore, each and every time that one travels to the tzaddik, one should experience it as if one was coming for the first time. It should not be as if one has already been to the tzaddik and is now returning a second time, but rather as if one has never been to the tzaddik, as if one is coming now for the first time. The main thing is the beginning, since all beginnings are difficult. And hence the main potency of all subsequent service is only the beginning, and according to the power and enthusiasm, and according to the power and enthusiasm of the beginning, so will one's service progress and develop. The main thing is the beginning, therefore one must constantly begin anew, in case one's beginning had not been as it could have been, and then all one's subsequent service will not be as perfect as it could be. Nach nachman, for everything develops according to the beginning. Therefore, one must constantly begin anew, coming to the tzaddik anew, nachman, with great energy and enthusiasm and fresh vigor to serve God, so that one's subsequent service will be according to that beginning. Similarly, one must always be concerned about this, that perhaps one has not yet begun properly and must begin coming to the tzaddik each time anew, nachman, meuman. Lesson number 63, the secret meaning of circumcision, the bris covenant circumcised male organ, is called an amo in Aramaic, as it is referred to in the Talmud, and corresponds to the measurement amo of 6 seforim, hands breadths long, which the covenant encompasses. This corresponds to fiery angels that stand around him with 6 wings to each, 6 wings corresponding to the 6 hand breadths, nanach.